Welcome to the Higher Power Podcast, presented by Higher Power Sports PT, the show dedicated to helping active individuals like you unlock your full potential through expert insights on injury prevention, performance enhancement, and recovery. Kurt Kessler is a board-certified specialist in sports physical therapy and an athletic trainer. In each episode, he and his guests bring you the latest evidence-based strategies to help you move better, feel stronger, and stay injury-free. Let's learn together.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Higher Powered Podcast. Today's topic: can you really prevent injury? It's a really hot topic in sports medicine. On one side, people say you can't prevent injury. There are too many factors that go into it: strength, endurance, intensity, stress, nutrition, hydration, training, movement patterns, workload, chronic workload, external factors beyond our control. And the other side says you can measure things and train against certain stimuli and proper strength training and load management. People have very, very strong opinions on this, and you'll be delighted to hear that I have a lukewarm take somewhere in the middle. But before you hit stop and move on to your next podcast, let me at least present the argument and why I've come to the conclusion that I have. Let me start with the side that says you can't prevent injury. Let's kind of address each of the factors that I outlined just a minute ago. So for strength, if the load on your muscle is greater than its capacity, then the load gets transferred to a more passive structure like a tendon or a joint, ligament, and something will give, or at least respond with irritation. Here's an example. Say I squat 100 pounds, but somebody drops 1,000 pounds on the bar. I'm going to be hurt. My quads are going to be blown out. Now, no one does this, but on a much more micro level, it does happen all the time. And instead of someone's quads blowing out, maybe their tendons get a little ouchy and they develop a tendinopathy. Is that preventable? Can you prevent that? Mostly yes, by either training smart or getting some guidance with your progressions. Is it going to be prevented 100% of the time? No, because without existing pain, most people don't think or know they need some guidance. But in theory, that is preventable. Another extreme case is one of these more extreme scenarios where it's like life or death, or your kid gets stuck and you need to flip something heavy off of them, not preventable there. You do what you have to do. But for the most part, most cases, these kind of things are more preventable. Endurance. When endurance capacity is exceeded, then you often see a breakdown in form or movement quality, poor mechanics, compensation, and increased stress on joints and tendons. The preventable case here is train within parameters to slightly overload endurance to make adaptations, but not huge jumps. On the other side, the unpreventable case is if you're in overtime of a game and you give it everything you have because the goal is to win. Maybe you end up with a lot of soreness the next day, or your form breaks down and a bigger injury happens. I call this unpreventable because the human nature of competition is going to outweigh anything else in that moment. The next thing, intensity. Think of speed or force or power demands for this one. If this is exceeded, you're going to see injuries like muscle strains, tendon tears, ligament sprains or tears, maybe even stress reactions. The side or the case for the preventable side is train with progressive overload for tendons to strengthen them in vulnerable positions. The unpreventable case would say demands of the sport can be unpredictable. All the Achilles tears in especially the NBA over the last year or so, I'll touch on later, but there are just times in sports where we're subject to greater intensity demands than what we've been trained for. The next one, stress. For a deeper dive on stress or stress capacity, listen to episode 26 where I go into stress capacity, what it is and what it means. But basically, internal and external stress weigh equally on the nervous system. And you'll see when stress capacity is exceeded, you might notice poorer recovery, longer recovery, slower tissue healing, higher inflammation, and higher fatigue levels, or just being more tired. On the side that would argue that this is preventable, there are stress management techniques to help control stress. You can seek counseling, correct exercise adaptations during stressful times can be modified. And then the unpreventable side of this argument, you can't always control the stresses that are placed on us, especially by others. Like think about your boss at work or your kids or unexpected life events. You have to be reactionary to settle it. And there's a lot to be said for that. As far as nutrition goes, I could do many episodes on this, and I have done so with episodes 9 and 10 with Angie Dye. Nutrition is like a super big topic in sports medicine because we know the effect that food can have. It's a very powerful tool. It's an undervalued tool because we can't always see or feel the effect of it. But some signs to look out for that could suggest your nutrition isn't up to par: recurring stress fractures, tendinopathy, muscle strains that happen again and again, prolonged soreness, even just not having energy for sport or exercise, maybe even some cognitive functions change a little bit, like you're not feeling quite as sharp. Here's the case for the preventable side, or at least what you can do to help yourself. Partly because my wife is a dietitian, I have been invested in her career. Granted, her area of expertise is with a different population than mine. Nutrition, I think, is one of the least understood and therefore probably most overlooked aspects of health in general. When people hear the word nutrition, or even think of it in the context of sports, they tend to think like only eating fruits and vegetables or only eating organic food. I'm telling you, you don't need a degree in nutrition and dietetics to make well-informed choices for yourself. When I say that, I don't mean never eating junk food or counting calories or going on diets or anything like that. It pains me to even say going on diets because it's so outrageously misunderstood, but it doesn't take much effort to learn what carbohydrates are and what they do, learning what protein is and what it does, learning what fat is and what it does, and help you understand what good fat is versus the fat we want to avoid. Like just getting an understanding for what you are putting in your body and what it does for you. The biggest barrier is an individual wanting to learn and being willing to make a change. I will tell you, my wife and I do not eat perfect diets, but we at least know what we're putting in our bodies. Learning how to read a food label is one of the easiest and best skills to acquire for this. There are millions of resources, YouTube videos, even some supermarkets have people that can help with that. Another argument I could get here is the cost. Inflation and the rising prices of groceries. I don't have money to buy all organic food. That's fine. You can still make whatever money you have and apply it to the best choices within your budget. There is no specific one way to eat. In fact, I don't even want people to think this food is good or this food is bad. Enjoy what you eat, but just make informed choices. At least learning what you're eating is an invaluable tool for your health. Now, on the other side of this, the unpreventable side, the reality is that not many people have the time or desire to be measuring out what you're putting in. So I don't think you need to. We don't need to create unhealthy, obsessive habits around counting calories. But again, I think just knowing what goes in your body is really helpful. That point was a little bit long, but it is very misunderstood. I'm not even saying I'm an expert on that, but again, it's just so far overlooked, and I thought it was one of the low-hanging fruits, pun intended, to help people. All right, moving on. Next, hydration. So the performance aspect of hydration is that dehydration can decrease tissue elasticity, or how far a muscle can stretch. Among many other things, dehydration can contribute to muscular injuries and tendon irritation. The preventable side of this, honestly, unless you legitimately don't have access to water, there's no excuse for this one. My wife will tell you that for years I did not drink enough water. Actually, I'll tell you, everyone's thirst and needs vary, but I adapted my hydration so that I didn't have to stop working to go to the bathroom, which is dumb, I know. But drink water or light sports drinks until your pee is like a nice lemonade color. It's the easiest recommendation I have. On the unpreventable side of this, when you get in the weeds of intense activity, prolonged activity, sweat, and electrolyte loss, that can get complicated, as you'd see in sporting events. You can't always come off the field for a drink in all sports, but you can still take action to prepare yourself. Now, I'm going to lump together training, movement patterns, workload, and chronic workload. For this, the side that would argue that injuries are preventable in this manner, we all have the ability to train or exercise, but performing a well-rounded exercise routine, we can do pretty well with resisting injury. But going into the finer details of movement patterns, unless you're like testing stuff yourself or have someone who knows some stuff testing you, you might not ever know that your movement is a little bit off. Most of the time, when something is off, it can result in some pain or injury, and then we seek help for it. First off, no one person is perfectly strong, perfectly mobile, perfect mover throughout the body. Nobody's perfect. So this isn't meant to create fear. The truth is we all have something or many things to work on. So a lot of times when people say that certain things are preventable, it's this they are talking about. Like if someone is moving poorly or weak in a certain area or stiff in a certain area and it affects the way they move, someone out there can help you change that so that your risk of injury is lower. That's the context that I think is most referred to with preventable injuries. A weak link exists that can be modified. When you talk about workload or chronic workload in training, let me ask you a question. If you are a 35-year-old man and haven't played basketball in a year, do you think it's the wisest choice to go out and play against high school kids? No. But guess what? I did it. Did I die? No. Did I get injured? Also no. But that's a scenario where you do see people get injured, is when you introduce forces or stimuli to the body that it hasn't been prepared for or hasn't had time to adapt to. So we have the ability to think logically about workload, how much activity or strain we're putting on our bodies or a muscle group, and chronic workload, how long have I been consistently doing a given workout, or how consistently have I been working out in general. On the other side, the unpreventable side is nobody's perfect, and we do what we want to do. We go and decide to be active because it's fun, but don't consider some of this stuff. Like I just said, I knew the risks going into playing this student faculty basketball game. I came out okay, but I fit in that age group because I'm not playing basketball consistently. For athletes who are competing, you have 3 games this week. Long road trips or flights, games go into overtime, extra practice gets scheduled, or for some of the kids that I see, you're playing multiple sports in the same season and both had a busy week and now you're hurting. You can't really prevent the schedule. The last one here, external factors beyond our control. On the preventable side, optimize training to make yourself more resilient to injury. On the unpreventable side, this is your time to shine, baby. This is your argument. You can't prevent unpredictable things acting on you. Your lineman engaged in a block. The running back gets tackled and falls on your ankle. No training program in the world is going to stop that. You get run into from the side of your knee while you're planting and twisting. Not much ACL training is going to matter there. You're the driver and the other driver is texting and comes into your lane and hits you. You can't really control that. Those injuries are unpreventable. External factors are acting on us. So what does this all mean? What do we do with all this? Injury prevention is something that everyone is interested in because nobody wants to get hurt. But it's something that is very, very hard to sell. What I mean by that is if you're not in pain, you probably don't see a reason to pay someone to evaluate you and change what you're doing. The problem isn't big enough because it's not costing you anything. The other thing, we can't live in an alternate universe. In one universe, you do nothing and go out and get hurt because you twisted a certain way. In the other universe, you had someone identify the weakness in your athlete profile, and in the same game, you don't get hurt because you addressed it in training. That doesn't exist. Maybe it's true in some cases, maybe it isn't, but for people in the camp that you can't prevent injury, you take all the factors we discussed, strength, endurance, intensity, stress, nutrition, hydration, training, movement patterns, workload, chronic workload, external factors that are beyond our control. All of those factors and more are all fluctuating on a week by week, day by day, minute by minute basis. There's no way to control all those factors or optimize all those factors at the same time. On one day, your girlfriend breaks up with you and the aftermath, the side effects greatly swing and alter all of those factors. Versus if your girlfriend didn't break up with you that day, all these things interact to create different environments that expose people to varying likelihoods of injury. So the way that I look at it, my lukewarm stance in the middle, life and all these factors are so unpredictable that no, we cannot prevent injury, or at least not all of them. But what I do believe is that we can mitigate risk or at least modify the likelihood of injury by strength imbalances, movement inefficiencies, create healthy lifestyles through exercise, nutrition, and stress management, to train more specifically for our goals and become more resilient to injury. So my final stance is no, not all injuries are preventable, but we can, in some cases, significantly mitigate risk of injury by taking a holistic approach to care. One more thing to add, it's pretty much just restating everything I said, but I thought of it late in the process and gives a little more validation to what I was saying. The first of the 5 domains of athletic training is injury and illness prevention and wellness. So I'm taking this off of the summary page here. The purpose, identify and reduce the likelihood of injury before it happens. It's about preparing the athlete's body to tolerate the demands of sport. Number 1, risk factor identification. Athletic trainers look for things that increase injury likelihood, such as strength deficits, mobility limitations, poor neuromuscular control, previous injury history, training load spikes, recovery deficits. And this includes screening, movement assessments, and just a review of the athlete's history. Number 2, workload management, preventing the capacity versus demand mismatch, monitoring volume, intensity, frequency, sport demand, and this helps avoid overuse injuries and acute overload injuries like the ones I described earlier. Number 3, movement quality, ensuring the athlete can absorb force, produce force, control force. This addresses landing mechanics, cutting mechanics, deceleration ability, or the ability to slow down your speed. Number 4, physical preparation, building tissue resilience through strength training, power development, endurance training, mobility work. The goal is to increase load tolerance and improve your tissue capacity. Number 5, recovery and readiness, monitoring sleep, nutrition, hydration, stress, because poor recovery equals increased injury risk. Number 6, environmental and equipment safety includes heat and cold risk, field conditions, protective equipment, footwear. So in summary, injury prevention means managing the gap between what the sport demands and what the athlete can tolerate when that gap is controlled. Then injury risk decreases. In the vein of this topic, I do offer a service to athletes and active individuals called the Performance Snapshot. What I do is I start with a general movement screen. I do strength testing for bigger muscle groups, and then depending on the sport, I test some smaller or more focal muscle groups based on their sport and get into some sport-specific movement patterns. From there, I take that data and identify areas of improvement, the areas we can attack to try to make you more resilient to injury. The idea is then to take that, build a program, and work together remotely, but really it's just an opportunity to affect what we can affect to better prepare you for the demands of sport. This is a pretty thorough approach, so it does take a little longer than a standard PT evaluation. If you're interested in learning more about that, go to www.hpsportspt.com or send me a DM on Instagram. Thanks to all for listening. If you are interested in connecting with me, feel free to find my information in the show notes or find me on Instagram at Higher Power Sports PT. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Higher Powered Podcast, presented by Higher Powered Sports PT. We hope you gained valuable insights on how to stay strong, move better, and prevent injury, all backed by expert knowledge in sports physical therapy and athletic training. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more evidence-based tips and strategies to active individuals just like you. For more resources or to connect with us, head over to hpsportspt.com. That's hpsportspt.com. Remember, you've got the power to perform at your best. Keep training smarter, recovering faster, and living stronger. Just a reminder that the content shared in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be considered medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your health or treatment plan. Thanks for tuning in. We hope to see you next time on the Higher Powered Podcast.